Mayhem fans, we are back at it with another segment, the pre-4th of July edition of your home of wrestling radio, Monday Night Mayhem, broadcasting worldwide from Buffalo, New York, here along the airwaves of the Monday Night Mayhem radio network. Myself, the Big Mosh, along with my tag team partner, Blade. I know that, once again, you're doing very well. It's the 4th of July week. We're excited here.
Yes, we're here in the home of the Drury and Brierless Sabres.
Yeah, I think that sports conversation might work well on another day here. But, you know, Blade, over the course of the past week, we've been dealing with a lot of tragedy with Chris Benoit and his family, and it's about trying to get to that next level, trying to get back to the positive side of things. And you know what? When you think of Americana, I talked about this at the beginning of the show, you think of apple pie, you think of hot dogs, you think of baseball, you got the All-Star Game upcoming next week, and you know what? It doesn't get more Americana in terms of professional wrestling than the legendary Four Horsemen. And we are very privileged to have one of our good friends at the Mayhem back aboard our airways, the legendary manager of the Four Horsemen, J.J. Dillon.
For another Mayhem
appearance. And for the first time ever, former NWA United States Tag Team, former WWF World Tag Team Champion, and of course, who could forget NWA World Television Champion, Tully, Blanchard, two of the legendary members of the Four Horsemen, the pre-4th of July edition of Monday Night Mayhem. It doesn't get any better than this. Gentlemen, Tully, JJ, good evening. How are things going this week for you?
Great. Good evening, Big Mosh and Blake. Good to be back on. And since you're having Tully for a guest for the first time, I feel honored to be back with you on this occasion.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with James J. You spend 5 years of your life every day with James, and certainly first time being with you guys on Mayhem. It's a thrill to be here.
Most importantly, fans, if you have any questions for either JJ, Tully, or the both of them together, we're going to be taking your emails at MondayNightMayhem@hotmail.com. We're firing up the Mayhem message board located at MondayNightMayhem.com, the Mayhem's MySpace, MySpace.com/Monday Night Mayhem, and we'll also be taking some of your calls at area code 716-989-6630 during the latter part of our time with JJ and Tully. And I just got to ask you this as a little bit of an icebreaker question, guys, because obviously our thoughts and our prayers are with the entire family of Chris and Nancy Benoit, who have been undergoing a very tumultuous time right now. Probably one of the worst stories in the history of professional wrestling is still ongoing right now. How good is it to be able to have, not just coming aboard our airwaves, but when you have a comment like I just made, and I'm sure a lot of fans are coming up to you, and they will be coming up to you next month at the NWA Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can log on to NWALegends.com for more information on that. With the fact that of all that's going wrong with the wrestling world right now after this past week, and the fact that people can say the Four Horsemen brings it back to where it belongs, that nothing describes Americana, nothing describes professional wrestling more than the Four Horsemen, what does that mean to you? Tully, I'll start off with yourself.
Well, it's, the tragedy, and certainly none of us will really know all the facts and you'll have some evidence, but the things that were going on inside Chris's mind and the influences and the thoughts. But the thing that I think that as you making a statement about Americana of wrestling being accentuated by the Four Horsemen, the strongest thing that I can say to that is that was the approach that we all took to business. I mean, when I watched the Four Horsemen video that the WWE just put out, I mean, Rick talked about it. We went out to perform and entertain people every night, and that's what we did. And we did it with 110% of our energy and effort, and that's why there's so many people remember it. That's why so many people appreciated it, was because they got all of everybody's effort. It wasn't guys out there trying to worry about their career. We went out there to make other people look good, and that just is not the way things are nowadays. Nowadays, it's everybody out for themselves, or how can I look the best, or how can I win, or how can I this, or how can I that, rather than, hey, what's best for the business, what's best for the match, what's best for the situation, and making somebody else look good. So that giving attitude is what really gets you back down to the basis of what this country is about.
JJ, let me ask you the exact same question. Yep, we're still here. JJ, let me turn it over to you. Obviously, with the ramifications of what's been happening over the past week, the fact that a lot of people are relying on the positive things in professional wrestling to sort of go forward from here, and they're also taking a trip back to when wrestling was actually wrestling, when we didn't have to worry about the whole juiced-up steroid freak stories and the fact of possibly Vince McMahon going in front of Capitol Hill, just all this information that we're seeing before us just today nonetheless, what does it mean to you personally to think that the Horseman is a slice of Americana and that just what you guys did in your time in the NWA and WCW could actually help people sort of as a cathartic effect move forward from this tragedy?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with what Tully has just said, and it's very difficult right now to reflect on the positives of the wrestling business when there are people who you knew personally that were involved in a tragedy such as this, and then you look just before that, people like Sensational Sherry. I mean the list just goes on and on. But I think Tully's comments were key, that the success of the Horseman had a lot to do with, and it's true with anything in life, you get out of it what you put into it. And as you know, I'm a huge baseball fan, and I watch a lot of games, and there's always a lot of comment about they play 162 game season, and how difficult it is, and how hard it is to stay up every day, play through injuries. That is the big challenge. Well, wrestling, Tully and I was out there with him, and earlier in my career went through it myself. Wrestling was 50 to 52 weeks out of the year, and at least 6 nights, sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday. And the philosophy always was that, this is my second event on a Saturday or my second event on Sunday, but for the people that were there in that arena that night, that was their first time seeing you in a while, and they paid with certain expectations, and so there was a responsibility and an obligation to go out there and give everything you had, and if you had anything left in the tank, sometimes you had to give more, because that was basically that work ethic was what I think held us all together. And ultimately, as you look back 20 years after the fact, I think that was one of the keys to our success, and that's why people remember us and why people respect us, because they realized that we gave them everything that we had.
JJ, let me start off with yourself on this particular question. It seems that, I don't want to say anybody who's anybody in the wrestling business has commented on their thoughts on the whole tragedy, and it appears there's obviously more people that are the truth tellers that are saying that, this is exactly what a professional wrestling lifestyle is like, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. But there are a slim of the group of people, and I can even say to a certain extent, Joni Lauer, China, for instance, it seems that she has her own personal agenda, and a lot of the news coverage that we've been seeing is, for instance, Fox News, is to a certain perspective slanted and skewed, and it really seems that a lot of people are going after the WWE, that the media will do anything to hang Vince out to dry in this particular story. Obviously, this is your time to give your perspective on exactly, what you've been thinking, literally 1 week removed after the whole story broke down and has happened, and, this, coming from our fans directly, what's your comments on not only the story, but how the media has covered the story and how certain media outlets have I don't necessarily want to say misquoted the story or mistreated the story, but how they've skewed it at least to a certain extent?
Well, it became such a media event. A lot of people jumped in and covered the story and tried to cover the story in depth and didn't know where to go to get factual information or, informed comments. And so a lot of things were said that, as I watched it, the comments were absurd. And as you said, there were probably people that wanted to be in the national spotlight to comment. It just, when something like this happens, it just seems like there is a media overkill. But there is probably a certain correlation between tragedies like this and the lifestyle. I'm sure that has something to do with it to some degree. When I wrote my autobiography, I devoted a whole chapter to what I call the myth. And the myth to me was this perception that the average fan had that, wrestlers were these bigger-than-life characters. They were rich. They were famous. They didn't have the problems everybody else had. They didn't understand that there was more than the bell-to-bell glory of being out there with the cheers of the crowd and with the ring lights and all that went with that. They weren't there when guys like Tully went to the gym and went to the tanning salon, and the hours that they spent on the airplane and away from their families to get to places. This is part of the sacrifice, and being away from your family and being on the road and having to deal with the injuries, knowing you got to get up the next morning and pull yourself out of bed and get to the next town, and in many cases get to the gym for whatever kind of workout that you can get. So it is tough. It's a very, very tough lifestyle, and it's not for everyone. And I always believe that you have to have, especially in wrestling, a tremendous love and passion for what you do. I had it because I started as a fan as a kid. Tully, it was ingrained in him because his father was a very successful wrestler, and he comes from a wrestling family. And we took pride in what we did. We loved what we did. And sadly, there's